Right, looks like it's going. Good stuff. Office hours. The extreme. The one and only. Because who on earth else would think to do virtual office hours on a stream on YouTube in a lonely corner? Welcome to anybody who's watching. Hoping to talk a little bit about files today. I gave my students their first taste of how to work with files in Python. Looks like we're all a little lost on how to use them. That's okay. It's a little bit complicated, the first time you do it. I think it's, a lot of people kind of give young people, like I see a lot of articles like this, consumers don't know files and folders. A lot of people like to joke about this, but it's not really anybody's fault. Yeah, look at this stupid article. Apparently don't know how to understand file systems work. Well, the thing is, right, you guys grew up with search engines pretty much being the main way you got around, right? If you're on MacBook, you use Finder to find your files. If you're using Windows, you have that stupid little search bar. I don't have it here because I deliberately don't like having a search. Actually, no, I'm wrong. I do have a search bar on the XFCE now. So yeah. Even I kind of use this sometimes when I'm trying to find a program that I don't normally use, like, I don't know, Thunderbird or something like that. Right, so, this is kind of just how people use computers these days, right? Nobody really thinks about it in terms of like a file cabinet anymore. In fact, I don't think even most kids see file cabinets that much anymore. So it's not really a fair criticism, in my opinion. We just gotta rethink how we teach that stuff. That's really on us to kind of think, how did it make sense to us when we were kids? We just kind of clicked around and figured it out. Like, how I'm just clicking around on random articles that I opened right now. All right, so while I'm waiting for people, yeah, that's my agenda, right? So we're going to read up on the XZ vulnerability. We're going to talk file management. We're going to talk about some cool stuff we can do with files in Python. So while we're waiting for people, let's read up on this XZ vulnerability that the internet has been going crazy about the past few days. You may be wondering, if you're a student of mine, what are you even talking about? What's XZ? Do I even use that? Well, you may or may not. XZ is kind of a very basic compression system, right? So if I could do the manual for XZ real quick. XZ is a way to compress or decompress XZ or LZMA files. Most people are probably more familiar with zip, right? That's probably that's the default on Windows. I don't know what Mac uses. I assume that's also the default. But, right, everybody's kind of familiar with zip files. It's not the only compression scheme out there. I'm not sure if XZ is more or less efficient than zip is. I think probably more, because zip is pretty standard. But things like 7-zip out there, they have different compression schemes to them. So you can compress stuff in different ways. So XZ is a pretty critical package that is used by lots of operating systems to uncompress files, specifically the Linux operating system. Right, so you came across, there's tons of articles about talking about this, that apparently this was not exactly a technical problem with XZ, right? So it's not like well, it kind of is, it kind of isn't. It's not exactly like somebody found like a flaw or a mistake somebody made, right? This was something that what it is basically is this is a very small tool, basically maintained by one guy, right? And whoever wants to help that guy, basically. That's how a lot of open source projects work. Some are built by teams of people, but a lot of projects out there are kind of like the benevolent dictator model, as I like to call it, right? They're kind of just, one guy made a project some summer, and it got out of hand when people started contributing to him, and now he's a maintainer, right? So that's kind of the situation with XZ, right? There was kind of one or just a small group of maintainers, right? And one of them was this guy named Jyoti75, who was actually like contributing like good code to the repo. Like he was doing feature stuff. Like he was oh, my mic's peaking a little bit there. Let me turn that down just a little bit. I think that's up. There we go. Right, so he was man, it's still too loud. Let's try this. There we go. Hello, blip, 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 blip. No, it's still a little loud. Let's turn it down. There we go. No? Good enough. It's still peaking. Let's try. There we go. No? I'll go with it. That seems right. Let me just stay away from the mic, kinda, so that way I'm not too loud in it. But anyway, so this guy was he was contributing good stuff to the project, but at some point he committed kind of something that apparently was messing with different programs, right? The way it was discovered. Well, let me just pull up the graphic because this guy did a better job than I ever could at explaining it. The guy's name is Thomas Roccia. He goes by, I hope I'm saying that right, Roccia. I think that's how you'd say it. But he goes by Frogger with a 0 on Twitter, and I guess the underscore is part of his name too. I wouldn't know Twitter. I haven't been on there in a long time. But this kind of tells the basic story of how all this happened. So let me go ahead and pull up that project, actually. That might be fun to look at, kind of on stream. GitHub.com/ what is this guy's name? Tukani? I think with 2 A's. Tukani project /XZ. Oh, oh boy. They, I guess they don't want people knowing about it. Can't I just, like, look at the code, though? Like, is that fair? What if we wanted to analyze this, man? Let's see. Is there any way I can... Oh, wait, you know what? I bet this guy has a personal Git. Let me look at this guy's name. Tukani. Tukani.org. Git.tukani, so it's the mirror. xz.git. Right, it'll be a little bit harder to go through, but that's okay. So as I understand, the problem file is actually a test file. So let me go back to this little guide. So he makes his first commit like years ago, actually, right? So he's been working on this for years, right? He's been trying to gain trust for a long time. I don't know what that means. Well, it looks like he was testing something. Malicious build to host.m4 file added to git ignore. Obfuscate, that's what I was looking for. So these 2 files apparently contained a bash script, which supposedly, when you build XZ, so in other words, when you update it, right, and recompile it and do all that stuff, right, this little macro thing runs, and it unzips this text code. This test, not code, test file, right? This is an example of like a corrupt file that you might use with XZ. And what happens is when you update, basically, it runs the script, it decompresses that, and somewhere hidden in that is a bash script that I don't know if they actually know what it does yet. I don't know if it's been determined exactly what the purpose of the file was. Yeah, so this was the last update I had as of today, April 2nd. So they might have an update by tomorrow for all we know. But the original guy who found it, who is Andres Freund, who was investigating SSH stuff. So SSH uses XZ in some way. I'm not sure how, but it makes sense. It probably decompresses something or works with compressed data in some way. He was he was doing testing, right? And he happened to notice that he was logging into SSH a little slower than normal. So I think he was actually using like Valgrind or something like that to test it. And he was basically benchmarking. Like if it wasn't something he noticed like while he was logging in, he was testing the SSH package. And all these weird errors kind of came up, and they were all pointing to XZ apparently. And kudos to this guy for like reaching out and warning everybody so quickly, because man, was that a lucky find. But yeah, we don't actually know what it does yet, but presumably it's going to allow some kind of access or backdoor into your system. That would mean basically some kind of server that somebody could connect to from the outside. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting story, but a lot of people are kind of arguing like a lot of the conversations I'm seeing back and forth are kind of like, oh, is this like a vulnerability of open source? Like how many is every package compromised now? I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not really a big Git guy. Really, I've never contributed to anything, so I have no authority to speak on this whatsoever. But in my view, this didn't really affect anybody, right? So it was found in time, right? Now you could say that that was luck, but at the same time, open source makes your own luck, sort of, right? Because you're not just testing with just your internal team or whatever. You're testing anybody who happens to be testing that day could possibly find a vulnerability, right? So you could make an argument that this is actually a strength of open source, right? That it was kind of noticed before it got pushed to the stable systems. So the actual details of this, that Debian says that right, oh sorry, no, Red Hat. This was Red Hat's thing. So nothing Red Hat was running was affected. I don't think Ubuntu was affected. Debian, even their testing branch wasn't affected. The only one that was affected was SID, which funny enough is the one I run, just because I like pain and I like to see error messages and like to learn a little bit about how they actually update the system and stuff like that. But I don't read enough mailing lists to really be using this to its full potential, unfortunately. That's a story for another time. But anyway, it really only affected experimental builds, right? So I don't know. It feels like, I feel like you could argue it either way. Needless to say, I think this is going to be an argument for a while. This is a pretty big thing, because it wasn't just like again, it's big not because like it's like a big access or whatever. It's a demonstration of how deep social engineering can go sometimes, right? This was probably somebody that they were trusted for months and was doing good work for a while, like, right? And just one day he decides, oh, I want to have access to every Linux system. Why not, right? It's it really makes you think, makes one think, right? What else can I say about this? Oh, I did find this while I was kind of reading this article. There's a way to kind of test if XZ is infected. Now, I'm running Debian SID. I did have the bad version for a little bit, so I probably was compromised for a little bit. Maybe he even has something on my machine right now, and I don't even know. Could be, right? But right as of right now, my version of XZ is the old one, 5.4.5. But this little tool apparently will detect whether XZ is whether it's in a different program, right? Whether XZ is linked to that program or something like that, or a bad file is linked to it or something like that. So live on computer, we're going to test if XZ is actually fixed, because it'd be kind of fun if it wasn't, right? Like, that'd be crazy if I run this and like it doesn't work. Like, it says like, oh no, you're still infected, right? I want to get this request right. So he's saying file equals path to file. I think you need the add to. Yeah, it'd be bad if it says that this XZ is still infected, because that would mean that my update doesn't actually undo it, which would be really bad. Details. Status benign. All right, sounds good to me. So I did some hashing and all that stuff. I'm curious if like other compression tools have the same issue. So what other compression stuff do I have? I know I have gzip. Is it gzip? Yeah, it's gzip. All right, so let's try that one. It'd be kind of, actually, no, it'd be kind of weird if it calls XZ, right? Why would you use a compression library in your compression library? I don't know. Let's see. Let's do it for fun. Benign. Gosh, I don't know. What else could I even test? I'm not going to test the whole freaking GNU system, that's for sure. Uh-oh. Something's stuck in my keyboard here. There we go. What other files might be interesting? You know what, actually, rather than doing this, why don't I look at the Debian package and see what's a dependency on it? So dependency is basically software that's required for other software to run. Most software isn't really made in a vacuum, right? It uses other software libraries to help it out, kind of. So other tools will probably be using XZ that need that tool to do its work. So similar packages. Does it say like what's a dependency on it? Other packages related? No. Let's see, is there a way to say depends? Wait, hold on. What's the format actually? They say dep. Let's try that string. Right, dep xz. Let's actually use the site name. Right, so we'll do site is packages.debian.org. Okay, that's one of them. What is this? MKOSI? Do I even have that tool? Never heard of that. Nope, okay. Look there. Let me put this in Google, because Google's just better at searching this shit. Pristine tar. That doesn't sound like the thing I have. Oh, dpackage. Okay, that's a big one. Right, dpackage dev. Do I have that package installed? I'm pretty sure I do. Well, I have dpackage installed, obviously, but I don't know if I have dpackage dev. But yeah, okay, so that one's installed. Is that actually? I think that's a library though. I don't think I can like upload a binary of that, right? Well, there's some tools here. All right, so you could do like dpackage architecture, right? That's a command, I think, right? Yeah, okay. Let's try to submit this one. Let's go back to the curl command. It's this one. No, upload. Okay, I guess it's not a elf file or whatever. Let me see. Maybe I get that wrong. File. Perl. Oh, it's a Perl script. Duh. Okay. Yeah, that would do it. Are any of these binaries? File at star. Oh, somebody's watching. Do I have a comment in chat yet? Nope, nothing yet. Okay. All right, this one's an ELF. All right, so I'm just curious for anyone watching, in case you're not familiar with Linux. Let me not put myself in the background to make that distracting. In case you're not too familiar with Linux, what I'm doing here is I'm using a star to basically say all those dpackage files. So if I just hit tab there, tab is an autocomplete thing. These are all the things that start with dpackage dash and yeah. So if I wanted to select all of them, right? So if I wanted to run the command on all of them, I just put a little star here. All right, so that will tell me the type of file each one is. Some of them are, this one's an ELF. Let's try that one. Benign. All right. All right, it's feeling good so far. I don't think I'm going to upload all my dpackage files to that website. That'd be kind of mean. But this is going to be a fun one to look at, I feel. I'm going to keep reading up on this, learning more about it. All right, so there's our little bit of security. No viewers yet. So, guess we won't have any students asking questions about files. But I'm going to do something fun anyway, I think. Clip this. All right, so after I just kind of went, oh, well, I don't want to start it here, whatever. Stop recording, whatever. Close this, well, minimize it rather. What do I need for this? guess I'll use Thunar for this, right? I don't want to confuse anybody. All right, folks, we don't have anybody taking any bites for the file system review right now, so I'm just going to kind of go ahead and look at how I organize my files and do a little bit of a critique, right? Give myself a grade at the end. So why do I want to talk about files? Files, so in the context of programming, right, most of what you're going to be doing is basically reading files, writing to them, updating them, and doing stuff with them. A lot of programming kind of comes down to that, whether it's graphics or video game design or cybersecurity or web scraping or whatever. It all kind of involves working with files in some way. So it's really important to understand how a file system works. And I noticed in class, year by year, this seems to get more difficult. And you're not to blame for this. If anything, I think your teachers are to blame. So a lot of people say, like, make stupid articles like this, like Zoomers don't know files and folders, which I kind of ironically made the name of my stream. I don't actually think this. It has nothing to do with, like, they don't understand it or anything like that. But the reason I think people, younger people tend to not get files right away is that it's just not how you interact with computers anymore. Almost everything's done by a search bar, right? If I want to go to Google, I type in google.com. If I want to search something on Google, like I want to know about Python, I put in Python and learn more about Python, right? So that's kind of just how we've interacted with computers. Even on this dinky little XFCE install, right? I still have a search bar that I use to kind of find things like appearance settings and things like that, right? So it's just not how people naturally interact with computers, right? So it would be kind of stupid for us to assume that you just get it right away. So what I'm going to do in this video is I want to talk about file management, like how we work with files and folders and things like that, some approaches that you might take to organizing them, and I'm going to look at how I organize my files as an example. And to be honest, I kind of probably don't do it correctly. I'm going to kind of critique myself a little bit and try to come up with some better strategies for next time. But I think I do want to start this off kind of with something that George Carlin said about computing, which you wouldn't think for those who don't know, George Carlin, he's a comedian, not exactly a computer expert, but he has a great phrase that he said in one of his jokes. I want to see if I can find it. You know what? He must have written in a book. Well, whatever. Oh, I'll have to cut that part out. That was stupid. But yeah, his approach to basically files was, any kind of joke or idea you have, you don't want to just write it down. You want to classify it, right? So maybe this is a dark joke, or this is a stupid joke, or things like that. That's how a comedian might think about it. And obviously for you, this is going to be different depending on, your personality, what you need, and the things you need to get to. And it's not really a skill that I think is really taught as a skill. It's kind of just assumed that people have a natural sense about these things. So maybe just by looking at my file system, we'll get a better idea of how we might want to organize things ourselves. All right, so a couple of things. So I used to be kind of a desktop person, right? I used to kind of put everything on the desktop. These files are kind of things that I used for other videos. So now I kind of use desktop as a temporary storage space, but this is what I used to do. And maybe you like this, right? There's nothing wrong with this. What I used to like to do is just kind of create folders for categories of stuff that I'm working on. So I'm trying to think back when I was a student, right? I might have for each semester, well, actually, I'd probably have a top folder called college stuff. Something like that. And I might have another folder for like my personal stuff, right? So like maybe code I'm working on, or a picture of a cat that I'm editing, or whatever. I might have like another one for like my photos, right? So like if I'm on vacation, might have another file for photos. And the way I'm doing this is I'm right-clicking, create a folder, right? So that should work on pretty much any operating system, I'm pretty sure nowadays. So what would I do from here? So in college stuff, what I want to think is, well, what are all the things that are related to college stuff? Well, chances are probably semesters might help, right? Because you're trying to get to maybe something from last semester, or you're trying to get to the current stuff, right? So I might make folders for each semester. 2024, right? So that's our current semester. Maybe the last semester I had something like this, right? And then in here, you know, I would classify yet again, right? So classify everything is sort of the motto here, right? So what things might I classify in fall 2023? Well, let's say I had just like a bunch of random files here, right? So maybe I had a program.py. Maybe I have like a letter, like or an email, right? Saved email from my boss or something. Should do that correctly. Maybe I have a few of those. Right, so I have a lot of emails in here maybe. Maybe I have some other programs. What other things might we have in a folder? Maybe some pictures. Here are some screenshots from Helldivers. All right, so I might have a folder like this that's full of kind of just random stuff. And if you're at this point, you gotta kind of rethink to that rule, right? Classify everything. So at this point, you know, I kind of want to look at the files and think, all right, how can I organize these better? How can I what's related, what isn't? So here I see like a bunch of Python files, right? Maybe I was taking a CS course, like CS 171, right? The best course that you've ever taken. So maybe I am taking CSC 171 and all these programs are for that, right? Push it into that folder. So that way, now I can go here and figure out all my programs. Now you might notice something. How do I know which program's which? Naming comes into it also, right? So the names of your files are also really important. So again, classify everything. What does the program actually do? Maybe this program just is the Hello World program, right? So maybe this is hello.py. To say that what the program does. This is what I keep trying to tell you guys to do with variables, right? Tell me what it does, right? Or same thing with functions, right? Tell me what it does, not necessarily try to avoid jargon and things like that. Don't call things program. Don't be generic. Try to be specific where you can be. Maybe another one of these adds to numbers, right? So I call this add2.py. Maybe one of these was a big project, like calculator project. So I'll call this calc project.py. Right, so there's kind of two aspects of file management. One is classifying the folder level. The other part is classifying on the file level. So how would this apply to, say, like a Python project? Let's say I had something like something that actually reads files. Maybe something that actually reads one of these programs, right? Let me write something in one of these. Let's open up a terminal here. Quickly write some edits. Right, so print hello. There we go. We got a program now. And let's change the name of this one to read. Right, we're going to read that file. So now at this point, I could just leave it all together, but now my files are going to get a little cluttered. It's not clear which file goes with which. So at this point, whenever you kind of have more than one file for a program, like a config file or something like that, I recommend making a new folder. So in general, when files start to get big there, you kind of need to make a new folder, or when things start getting related, right? When we're classifying things, we want to make a new folder. So I'll call this one read, because that's what the program's called. And I'll put the files that I want to read in there. Right, so that's going to be these two. Let me go ahead and make some read code. Then read. Nope, that's not it. Read.py. All right, so we just wanted to open a file. So we got to make a file object. So we will call it new file. You never want to call your files files because file is a type in Python. It was supposed to light up. What happened? Do I have to write it first? Whatever. So, it files something that can convert something to a file, right? Just kind of how int works, right? Int lights up. Why doesn't file light up? Whatever. Screw you, Vim. Anyway, I want to read that file, right? So, we want to use the open function to open the file hello.py. And the mode we want is to read that file. And we'll just print it out to the screen. Keep it simple. So for line in the file, we're going to print it. And of course, we want to close the file. So we do new file dot close. All right, and now I can read my file without really having to worry about any clutter. Right, so you can see how this might get a little confusing if you have lots of files to work with, right? So let me kind of go back to the other situation we were in here. Right, and let's say instead of having a folder, we had a bunch of these files. All right, and let's look at how this looks in VS Code, because that's kind of how we've been using throughout the program, throughout the course. Go ahead and go VS Code. Zoom in a little bit, close this, and let's go ahead and open a folder. So, let's see how easy it is to find our folder. Well, I know I put it on the desktop. I know it's going to be college stuff. I know it's from this semester. And no folders inside, so we're just going to open this one. Did I put it in fall 2023? Am I really that dumb? Yes, I did. Very, very cool. Let's do that correctly. Open folder. Fall 2023. And we're going to open up CSC 121. 171. Duh. All right, so now you can see from VS Code, this is immediately confusing, right? So many freaking files. Don't know where to start. Don't know what does what. Right, so let's say we wanted to clean this up a little bit from VS Code instead of our file explorer, right? So you can always use different programs to access your file system, right? So this is Thunar, which is a file explorer. On Windows, you'd have Explorer EXE. On Mac, you'd have Finder, but they all kind of work in a similar way, right? And so for So if we wanted to make a new folder from here, we could use VS Code's button to kind of help us out a little bit, right? So now we can make something like read. And we can control click to click two things at once and drag it over into the read one. And it's going to double check, do you want to move these into the read folder? Yes, I do. And now you kind of have a folder within a folder. You still have all these files though. Right, so if you wanted to go to just that folder, you'd want to open containing folder, right? So what I did here was right click, open containing folder. Right, that reveals it in File Explorer. So if I wanted to open it in VS Code, what I want to do is actually the open folder thing again. So we'd go to read this time and select that as the folder we want to open. Right, that'll reload, and now you can see I have a much more focused workspace. All right, so I did a lot of talking, a lot of hand waving, a lot of stupid examples, right? Let's look at how this looks in practice on my personal computer. All right, and you're going to learn a little bit about me, probably more than you want to. All right, so here is my main users, my main home, basically, right? So for Linux, this is home and your username. I believe that's the same for Mac as well. For Windows, it's going to be C/users, and then your username. But basically the same, right? So this is kind of like where you start. This is where your directory kind of starts. Well, not really. It actually starts with the root directory, but this is where your users directory starts. Okay, so you can see I have a lot of clutter in here. I have a lot of these dot files. So most of the time, so what are dot files first off? So these dot folders are hidden folders, right? So they're basically notes to the not the operating system, to the file manager to not show these by default. I personally kind of always show hidden files. just because I feel like I'm always in these folders, so like, why would I not show them? But let's say you wanted to just get to your stuff, right? Instead of all this stuff that's made by programs like configs and things like that, you could always hide this to see what's actually in your thing, which is what I'll do now to kind of make it a little simple. All right, so my first criticism of my files, my file system. I have all these random freaking files here. What the hell are any of these for? Right? Not following the classify rule, Mike. What you'd want to do probably to clean this up. I can see a couple things that I recognize. So this is like my resume. I probably want to just delete this, frankly, because I have my resume saved in other places. This, I think, was a code jam that I worked on. Some stupid little program. Yeah, we tried to make Blockdude, and it was fun. I learned a little bit about terminal drawing. But yeah, like, what the hell's that doing there, right? This should go in a videos directory or a pictures directory. In fact, I have a pictures directory, right? Why am I not using that one? Okay, so strike number one, Mike. You gotta classify everything. So where did I go right, though? So some things I do right. Well, I don't know if I do a whole lot right, honestly. My home is a little messy. So what I decided to do a long time ago was I got tired of all the clutter on my desktop. I decided to just move everything to one space called files. And this is actually linked to this other hard drive I have, right? So if this hard drive fills up, I can still use my computer. That's kind of my thinking. But in files, I kind of just have like a list of, you know, my files, right? So those would be all my personal files and things like that. Kind of like a convenient way to say this is my personal root directory, right? Instead of home. So home kind of has all this like crap that's automatically added, like music's automatically added. I don't need that. Documents is automatically added. I don't really need this. I used to use these, so that's why you see documents in them. But I really need to go back to, I really need to go and classify everything within the files directory so that everything's all together when I back these things up. Because that just makes backup more of a pain. All right, so now I'm gonna sort all these by name. And I can say strike number two is some of these are not great names. Right, so some of these I know right away. Art of Mem, right? These are, no, I don't even, this doesn't even have the Art of Memory Forensics, right? So I'm literally lying about what that folder has. Strike number 7, or whatever the hell I'm up to. Box is easy, right? Those are books that I have. Current reading, I guess, is stuff that I'm currently reading. I haven't updated this in forever. Right, so this is kind of getting to a structure, but there's a lot of stuff that probably could be better grouped together, right? Like I see a lot of program files here, right? I see message viewer, I'm seeing Noida together, right? This is all probably just stuff I downloaded at some point. This should really be in its own folder. All these folders should go to like a programs folder to be a little cleaner. All right, so that's strike number 18 or whatever I'm up to right now. How do I organize my code, though? I'm a little better at that, I think, but I'm not great, as you're going to find out. So my main code file I call little bits, and this is just all kinds of random code that I write. Some of it's kind of just fun little toys. Well, most of it's fun little toys, honestly. I'm not really a professional anything. But some of it is stuff like my website and things like that. This is a little better, right? So I can kind of figure out what all this is. I call these browser extensions for fun. But these are all kind of browser extensions I wrote just kind of learn a little bit about JS. Bash, of course, should be bash scripts. I only have one, though. I know I have more bash scripts than that. So this is like an example of like a useless folder, right? I need to put more stuff in there. Awk is awk stuff. Okay, so 0, 1, and 0, 2. That tells me probably chapter 1 and chapter 2 of the awk book. All right, that's not a bad way of doing it. Right, so if you're going through a textbook, you might call it like after the language you're learning or something like that. AOC, I believe, is Advent of Code. So different years that I did this. I don't do it every year, obviously, but and the number of the challenges they are. Right, and the reason I do this, again, is because I want to work on these things one at a time. So in this example, you had a puzzle that you kind of had to just sort through, right? So you had all these numbers, basically. I can't remember the exact thing off the top of my head, but you had to classify these numbers in some way, right? So this is an example of a program that uses a few different files. And actually, this one is like, there's a part 2 to this example. So this is the first part, and this one's the second part. So I'm thinking carefully about my names, and I'm also thinking carefully about how these files are related. So that's a good one. You got a +1 for one, +1 for you, Mike, for that one. A lot of these seem to be tutorials. I might honestly, one way I might clean this up really easily is kind of take all the tutorial stuff like ASM and awk and bash. I don't know what else, but yeah, all those tutorial stuff. I should probably put that in one folder called tutorials, right? So I'd right click, make a new folder, call it tutorials. Right, so that's kind of the thought process you want to go through when you're classifying your work. Because that's going to make the difference between being really confused about files and not, is making good names about stuff. I can also show you my work folder real quick. All right, so here I have the 2 courses I teach here. Right, so, and here are all the examples I did. This is a terrible file structure, and I'm going to tell you why right now. Because every time we do the labs, we do different examples. So slowly over time, these have just become repositories of random updates I made to code. This needs help. What I need to do is take all the files out of this folder, I think, and just classify them project by project, right? So instead of giving them stupid numbers like this, 26 and 27, I should make a separate folder with just a few of my favorite things in it. That way I know that that's all the stuff I need for that program. What else might help with that? Right? I might put my assignment rubrics there. That might help out too when I need to kind of refer back to those assignments. All right, so that's kind of how I think about files and how I personally have failed to maintain my own rules. But just because I'm a hypocrite doesn't mean I can't get better, right? So I'm giving myself a C- on this. I think I could do a lot better. Avoid numbers as names, things like that. Try to put things that are related more together instead of making extra folders, right? As soon as you have a lot of folders like this, like as soon as you're starting to see like a dozen folders, like where it's going off the screen, you might want to think about organizing that a little bit more, right? And that's going to help with programming too, because programming is basically just working through lots of files, right? Let me show you a couple of the programming projects that I had before and how these are going to look in VS Code. So let's do K&R. So K&R is a book on C programming. It was, I think, probably the first one. Right, if I open this with VS Codium, right, so I click there, and that has chapter 1, and already I have criticisms for myself, guys, because I have tons of programs in here, and I don't know, well, I know what they do, right, so I know I can kind of go back and figure out which one's which, but I really should have probably put each one in its own file, especially because with C you have to compile, right? So I have all these binary files as well. So yeah, this probably could have been cleaned up better, but you know, that's kind of how that file structure is going to help us at least figure out like what's in here. Right, so since I named them well, I can at least kind of figure out which code is which. Let me show you more of a realistic project that's better organized. So on my website, I open this with VS Codium. All right, so I have my main repo here, which is EasyCMS, I call it, for my content management that I wrote. I have all my site files in the site files folder, and you can see I also have you know, subcategories, right? So the tutorials articles go in the tutorials folder. The thoughts ones go in the thoughts folder. This one's really nicely organized because I worked a lot on this one. Site media, right? So these are like all the pics and videos that I might display on the website, right? So there's my cat, for example. I'll take any excuse to show a picture of a cat in a video, right? And I have a script there, so that tells me, right? So this is kind of nicely organized, right? This update media script helps update the site media folder. This site files only contains files for the site, and EasyCMS only contains the code for the web server. And you can see I have tons of Python files in this one, guys. So it's not uncommon to have lots of different Python files in one folder and have them all reference each other. So yeah, hopefully that little tour and little criticism of me encourages you to be better than me, be a better organizer, classify everything, and do cool stuff, guys. This is a lot of fun you can do with files in Python. I'm going to cut this video here, but if you want to continue on stream, I'm going to do a couple examples of some cool stuff we can do with the open function in Python. So if you're interested in that, click over on the live tab and find April 2nd, the April 2nd stream. And yeah, hopefully that was helpful, guys. All right, so I think that probably didn't come out great, but whatever. What can I do that's cool with files? Doesn't look like anybody's showing up tonight. What's something cool? You know, I found out one really easy way you could do steg with Python. So steg is basically the skill hack. I don't know what to call it. The technique, sure. The technique of hiding some data in another image. There are fancier ways you can do this, but I think this is a kind of a cool way you could kind of show, like a complete beginner, how steg might work. Let me go ahead and go ahead and make a file and stuff. So we go ahead and go to, okay, let's go to work. Files, work. CSC 171. Do I have the steg file here? I think I know I wrote one at one point, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and copy over something from cats. Any of these will do. All right, so I got a picture of a cat here. All right, let's try to hide something in that image. 20. Let's rename that image. All right, so instead of 2020 whatever, we're gonna rename it to cat.jpg. JPEG, right? JPEG. Okay, so in class we've really only ever talked about text files, right? So let me just make a simple that, right? So text.txt, some text. All right, and we learned in class that if we want to read this file, I'll call it steg because that's what we're doing. If we want to read this file, what we want to do is zoom in a little bit. So we're going to have a new file to open. We're going to open. The name of the file is text.txt. We're opening it for reading. And we'll just print out the contents for line in text.txt, new file. Almost made a mistake there. Print the line. No comments in chat right now. Okay. And then, of course, close the file. Python steg.py. This will print the contents of our file for us. Oh, whoops, that's not what I wanted. Steg. So there's a couple other ways you could have done this. What used to happen, I don't know when this was introduced in Python, but what you used to have to do is use this read lines function. What read line does is put all the lines of text into a list to loop through. This one works exactly the same. All right, so that's kind of like a legacy way of doing it, or an older way of doing it. Let's say you wanted to just put the whole file in one string now. You could also do something like this. So let's call it words, right? Because a file is made up of words. You could just use the read function. And what read will do is it's going to read the whole file, put it in one string, and stick it into words. All right, so let's print out words. Okay, as you can see, I get exactly the same text that I got before, right? So a couple different ways you could do the same thing. Right? We could use the read function, put it all in one string, and just print it all out at once if that's what we wanted. If we want to go line by line, we'd want to use a for loop. And we could we don't need the read line function anymore, but you could use it if you wanted to. Right? So that's the basic way of reading a file. Let's say we wanted to make this any file the user wanted, right? Right, so we'll make it an input. So now it's going to wait for me to enter something. I put in text.txt. It's going to read that text faithfully. What's another file I could read here? Word count. We'll read one of my programs. Right. So if I put in wc.py, right, you're going to get out a little Python program that is contained in that file. All right. So that's let me go back to that code real quick. I gotta remember to. Why am I not remembering the background? Whatever. Right. So right. So this little input here can be a nice little way we can ask the user for a file. If you want to be a little bit cleaner about that, right? So if you didn't want to confuse people so much, you could say the file name is equal to an input, and then open up the file name. Up to you, however you like to do it. Right? That's going to work the same way. So let me show you what happens when you open something that's not a text file. Right? Let's try to open up that cat picture. We get this weird error, which we haven't talked about, and we probably won't get to talk about in this class, unfortunately. But it's a pretty interesting little story behind this error. So this is called a Unicode decode error. UTF-8 cannot decode byte 0xFF in position 0. Invalid start byte. Sounds like a bunch of nonsense. Let's try to parse that out a little bit. Unicode decode. So what that's telling me is I'm trying to decode text that is not UTF-8. Let me be a little bit more explicit what I mean by that. Python by default works in UTF-8. So if I have a word like a string, I can do ASD, but I can also do complicated stuff like emojis. Wikipedia. Yeah, sure. Take the fire. Right, so we want to make our program a little more fire. We can add the fire emoji. Quote. Right, Python's not going to complain about that. That is in UTF-8. But the thing is, it can't work with stuff that's not text. What's the best way I can show this? Well, let's first try to decode this. So, like I told you, this is encoded in UTF-8. If I want to see the actual byte values, and actually, this is a good way to remind you of ORD, right? Remember, ORD tells you the number that the value corresponds to in the ASCII table, right? So it's a number, a byte value is what you're looking for. The same is going to be true of the fire symbol, right? That's that number, I guess, right? So if it saw a number like this, it would know, oh, okay, that's the flame symbol. But it doesn't know what to do with other with all the other bytes, right? So if I try to give it something like well, first let me talk about how bytes work in Python. Right, so if I want to get the byte version of this, right, so the raw bytes instead of UTF-8, I can use the decode function here. I guess not. Am I doing that wrong? Encode? Oh, yes, okay, it's encode. Okay, my fault. I always mix those two up. All right, so encode is going to give me this guy, right? So let's talk about what this is. It has a little B in front of it, but other than that, it looks kind of similar to what my text was, right? This was my original text, and this is what Python got to me after I encoded it. So what I'm seeing here is all these are normal, right? But as soon as I get to the flame symbol, I get these weird kind of /X symbols. These are actually hex values, and the problem is, these might all be different characters in UTF-8. Well, actually, some of them might not be. Let's try to find out. Right, so let's say like 0xF0. So we want to do that dot decode, I think. Oh, no, sorry. I got to make it a byte string. Right, so this little B makes it a byte string so that you interpret that sequence as bytes. Decode. Right, so on its own, UTF-8 doesn't know how to decode that. But if I give it the whole thing, right, the whole 4 bytes, right, that's when it knows what to do. I'm curious, would this correspond to character? It probably would. No, it won't. Okay. So it does have to be 4 bytes, I think, UTF-8. I think that's... No, sorry. 4 bytes. No, yeah, 4 bytes. Yeah, this is 4 bytes. Sorry. 8 bits, 4 bytes. Right, so if I made these zeros instead, I think that is a character. No, okay. All right, so so the basic idea here is that I can represent a string either with Unicode or I can represent it in byte form with that little B in front of it. So where was that? Print or encode, right? So what's happening when it tries to read a picture file, it tries to read the bytes as text. And as you just saw, right, if I just put random bytes, it might not be UTF-8, right? And I was trying to guess, and obviously I got that wrong. So let's take a look at the text of that file. Now you might be thinking, how do I read the text of a file? Well, there's a nice little thing called a hex editor. I'm going to use the Bless hex editor for this one. That would be, what is it, ket.jpg. Okay, and right away you can see all those little bytes kind of in the file. So these, you can see, don't correspond to text. These do, right? This is the letter X, that's the letter E, that's the letter X, right? So some of them are characters, but not all of them. So when you read by default, Python tries to read in UTF-8, which is great if you're working with just text, right? And in this class, we're only going to work with text, but how do you work with something that isn't text? Right? How would you kind of investigate that? How would you mess around with that, like say steganography, right, where you want to replace the bytes in that file with something else? So what you're going to want to do with that is just change the mode of reading. So let me go ahead and go to steg. All right, I'm going to put this little b on the end, which doesn't seem like a big change, but that makes all the difference. This little b stands for binary. So instead of reading it as UTF-8 characters, it's going to read it as just raw bytes. All right, so now when I run this program, and I go for cat.jpg, and I print it out, I get all these bytes in the file, right? You can even see some text mixed in there too, because some of them do translate. So it'll try to translate the bytes it can, and everything else just becomes raw bytes. But this is all picture data, right? So these are all pixels in the file. But what's cool about Python is I can treat it all the same. God, people are probably mocking me all the times I'm writing FG and not doing it. They're like, oh, this guy can't Vim, can he? Dumbass. But anyway, so let's say I wanted to like replace some characters in there, right? So like maybe just like a random slice of the file. First off, how long is this file, right? How many bytes are in this file? Start there. You might be thinking, how does len get me the amount of bytes? Well, think about it. It's len gets you the character in the strings. Each character is a byte, so if the length of a string is going to be the bytes that string takes up. Okay, it's waiting for cat JPEG. Okay, so we got a whole ton of bytes in that file. So I could take any one of those bytes and replace it maybe with something else, right? So maybe like a little message. So the way that would work. Oh, the one time I remember to do it. That's so funny. People are mocking me, I bet. They are mocking me. What was I doing? Right, so we want to, our goal is to replace some characters in that string now. What's great about Python is binary strings also have all the methods that regular strings do. So you can literally just take a sequence of bytes, right? So let's before we do that, let's take out a slice in this file, right? Let's just pick a random slice. I can't call it slice. Byte slice. So we'll do words. It's this big, so we want to pick a number less than that. Let's just go with like 9001, something funny. And let's replace it with just like the word hello. So how many characters is the word hello? HELLO, 5 characters. So we want to go 5 characters, including that character. So that's going to be 9007, I believe. Okay. Actually, doesn't matter because replace doesn't really care about the length, but that's what we'll go with. Oh, it's words. Sorry, not word. Okay, so now that I have a string that I want to slice, so let's look at that byte slice just for the sake of argument. I have no idea what it is. It's going to be just some random bytes. .jpg. Right, so it's the sequence of bytes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it looks like I counted wrong. Oh, no, sorry, Q's in there. So that's 5 bytes. Great, so we have some 5 bytes in the file we can work with now. All right, so now all we have to do is use the replace function. So we can do words equals words dot replace the byte slice with whatever we frickin' want, right? I'll say hello. Cannot be assigned to... Oh, it has to be a byte string. So you see this little error saying hello is incompatible with bytes. It has to be a byte string, right? So you can still use replace, but you have to replace it with a byte string. And then we'll just go ahead and print out words, right? So the new words. Now, if I run this, it's not going to look very impressive at first, right? You're still going to see a whole bunch of bytes. It's not really clear where the hello is. But if we know a little bit of operating system stuff, we know this character can send bytes to a file, right? So, or any text to a file, right? So we'll call this newket.jpg, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to output that text to that file. No, actually, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's do this the Python way, right? How do we write to files in Python? So we're going to have to open yet another file, right? So this is going to be the write file. I'll go call it. I'll just name it newket. In this case, we want to write to binary, right? So it's going to be WB. Right, just like we can use .read, we can use .write if we want to just write everything into a file. So I'll just go ahead and say write file. .write words. Right? We're going to write the words to it. Okay, and we'll close both files. All right, so now when I run Python steg and I put in ket.jpg, I now have 2 files here, right? So I have ket.jpg. Oh, where's newket.jpg? Oh, there it is. It's just not highlighted for some reason. Right, but let's take a look at both those files and see how similar they are. So this is ket. Well, let me open it in File Explorer. Right, so you can see this is ket, right? That's a ket. And you can see this is newket. They look pretty damn similar, don't they? Right? They look almost identical. But one of these guys has a hidden phrase in it. So if I go back to my terminal and I run strings on the newket, let's find that message. Oh, there's my message, right? So let's open it in a hex editor to really see it, right? So you can see all these bytes, and then where's 9001 gonna be? You know, I don't need to guess. I can just go to it. So let's go search, go to offset. It's gonna ask me in byte. I'll put it in 1000. Well, I'll just use Control F then. We're gonna call it hello. Oh wait, no, text. That's the problem. Hello? End of file reached. What did I... Oh, this is ket. No wonder. We're opening the wrong file. Let's open newket, right? So we looked for hello there, we didn't find it. Now in here, I keep forgetting to do text. Here. Where did it find it? And why didn't it go to this offset to start with? I pressed 9000, it was around here. All right, but whatever. right? So we hit a message in this file, and we did it without really making many changes to that file. And all we did, right, all we did was this small little code here, right? Not really anything that you guys haven't learned, right? We ask for a file name, we open that file name, we read the file name, we pick some random bytes to replace, we replace those bytes with a phrase of our own, and then we write the new file. All right, so this is really powerful stuff, guys. You can do this to absolutely any file that you ever wanted to mess with. It gives you insight into how things really work under the hood. And I think it's super cool. Hopefully you thought it was super cool too. It's around 8 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up the stream there. Hopefully you guys tune in sometime and ask me more questions, because damn would I love to have you guys kind of prompt me through this and challenge me on some of this bullcrap that I am teaching. That's going to be it for today's stream, guys. A little bit of a passive-aggressive stream. I'm sorry about that. That's how it goes sometimes. Well, I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed it.